And then the FAA came out and said, yeah, we'll take anybody. You have disabilities, you have mental issues, come on board. I couldn't believe my ears. How about rehiring all those guys that they fired? You can't replace 20 years of experience with any new hire. How about you call them back and pay them back what you owe them? How about you call them back and pay them back what you owe them? You need two guys up there on their A game. And if you fall behind that airplane, it can get you killed. What they did, in my opinion, I think they stalled the aircraft.
Hey, thanks for coming back on, Danny. Sorry I had to bring you back on, actually, to be honest. Another aviation disaster. Just so we can clear the air right now, because a lot of people are, Monday morning quarterbacking it. A lot of people are speculating that this was a missile or this has something to do with the other crash at Reagan International. Just to clear it up, in your opinion, do either one of these have anything to do with each other, and was that a missile?
No, definitely wasn't. Nobody should be alarmed of any terrorist activity going on or anything like that. The airplane does actually look like a missile. It's a Lear 55. It is a really sleek aircraft, and if it was out of control hurtling towards the ground, it's going to look exactly like a missile. The aircraft only made it up to, I believe, 1,600 feet. Something terribly went wrong. From what I understand, before I went to sleep last night, they said as soon as they were cleared for takeoff, they were supposed to fly straight ahead and then do an arcing right turn and continue on to Missouri. The flight track shows that they kind of started drifting left. Weather conditions were crap. It was foggy. I know yesterday here in Chicagoland area, it was dense fog and a crappy day, and not too much flight activity was going on in my airport to begin with. So I either pilot error, or they lost it in the clouds, or there was a malfunction. It's too early to tell right now, but neither incident has anything to do with the other. That's for sure, in my opinion.
And as far as it being a missile, absolutely not.
No way. It was a Medevac flight. What that means is there was two pilots on board, there were two doctors on board, there was a patient on board, a pediatric patient, a child, and one of the parents was on board. That's the last report that I heard before I went to bed last night. So another interesting fact, when the airplane nosed into the ground, into that intersection, one of those medical oxygen tanks was found a quarter mile away.
Wow.
Yeah, so last night they were reporting they didn't know if it fell out of the plane on the way down or it bounced.
It's hard to say. I mean, that explosion, I'm looking at it right now. So a lot of people were claiming that the plane looked like it was on fire on the way down. Now, what I could see was the flashing light, which was, I think, on the tail light or on the tail. Is that right?
Yeah, they're going to have lights on the tail, lights on the wingtips. If they were taking off, they would have had their landing lights and their takeoff lights on. And they probably wouldn't have switched those off until they were all cleaned up, a little higher up. 1,600 feet's a little too low to be turning all those things off.
Right.
It's too early. So if it was coming down, I just told you that it was cloudy. So if you know what happens when you use a powerful flashlight and you beam it into the fog.
Right.
The light's going to do a lot of tricky things. So some people were saying it was on fire. Some people say it definitely wasn't. If there was an explosion on board, that would explain a lot. I think it was just way too early in the flight for anything like that to happen. They took off. They were 1,600 feet in the air, which is nothing.
Right.
Literally nothing. And they were supposed to start turning right. And right at that point, they started turning left. That's when everything went wrong, according to my opinion.
Okay, so there's no way this had anything to do with losing pressure and people passing out.
No, hell no. Your aircraft doesn't start pressurizing until about 12, 13, 14,000 feet.
Gotcha.
So that's not an issue at all either.
Wow, so it just took off, bad weather conditions.
The weather was crap.
This might explain why people were, thinking it was a missile. It came down so fast, it looked like a missile. What kind of speed do you think at that moment they were going for takeoff? They don't have to be going that fast. So you think, how long was it into the flight? Do we know? Before a couple minutes before they lost the plane?
Yeah, something like that. Well, imagine being in your car, okay? You're in a Porsche at the end of the runway. You get it up to about 130 miles an hour. That's when the thing starts getting off the ground, okay?
Yeah.
So from that point, you count that as zero. You climb up 1,600 feet. You've flown with me before. Going that fast, you're going to get up to that altitude pretty quick. So I would say from start to finish, to the point where they started turning left, I would say that would be about maybe 3.5 minutes.
Okay, that looks about right. I'm going to play you this. Now, this is a tweet that somebody came up with that said, at 57 seconds, you can hear someone say, quote, "They are effing with the wrong people," end quote. And I listen to this now. I don't know if this is doctored or not, and it's faint, but you can hear it. It's right at 57 seconds. What do you think somebody meant by that? Because it sounds like it was coming from the plane.
Med Service 056 on departure, turn right heading 290, runway 24, clear for takeoff, wind 25010.
Now, listen, I'm going to turn the volume up. Listen and tell me if you can hear this.
Not really.
I mean, maybe it's just...
I mean, so as far as your opinion, what you have to remember, if you're sitting in that tiny airplane, and I mean, it's a big aircraft from the outside.
Sure.
But on the inside, it's pretty small considering getting on like a 757 or a 767, okay?
Gotcha.
And there's a stretcher in there, so people are like huddled in there. So if the pilot is talking to air traffic control, you could probably definitely hear the doctors in the back talking. Their voices would probably end up on the mic.
Play it again, so just listen. It's real faint. Hear that? They're fucking with the wrong people.
There's just so much static coming through my phone. It's hard to hear it.
That's all right.
So who do you think said that specifically?
It sounded like somebody with some sort of accent. Now, I don't know. Did they say where the pilots were from yet? Are they from Mexico? Because I know it was a flight going to Mexico. They were headed to Kansas or Missouri, right, to fuel?
From what I understand, that aircraft is registered in Mexico.
Okay.
That's a Mexican company.
Well, that explains the accent.
That is going to be something only you can determine with your equipment. On my cell phone, there's no way I can figure this one out.
Yeah.
But if you can isolate who said it, you know, maybe it was the doctors arguing about something.
It could be, yeah.
You know, yeah, because they'd literally be sitting right behind them.
Right. It's a small cabin. I don't know.
Now, the other thing it could be is, what if the pilots were distracted and they were arguing about something? You know, because you're supposed to have a sterile cockpit, especially in those important phases of flight where you're taking off, and until you get up to altitude and everything's in order, that's when you can actually hold a conversation. And when you get that call to descend and start coming into the airport, that's where you just shut up and do your job.
So I guess what people are asking is there anything to be worried about right now, or is this just simply two terrible, accidents happening in a short period of time?
Well, it's way too early to tell. With me, I'm going to factor in the weather conditions, and then right away, I want to know who the pilots are. I want to know their time. I want to know their experience, because that Lear 55 is a handful, okay? A Cessna Citation, a single pilot could fly that because it's a very easy airplane to fly. The Lear 55 is the exact opposite. You need two guys up there on their A game, leaving an airport and coming into an airport. And if you fall behind that airplane, it can get you killed.
Really?
And what they did, in my opinion, I think they stalled the aircraft. If their instrument panels go blank, man, there's really not much you can do. Another, bad luck scenario, because it rarely happens. It actually happened to me with a co-pilot pretty much the first day on the job in a King Air. His whole left side was computerized and it went blank. And he looked at me and asked me if I had the controls and if I had it. And I'm like, yeah, I did, because I had all steam valves on my side. And without my side, it'd be a scary scenario. I'm not sure how that aircraft was equipped, but if it was fully electronic, with me, I prefer to have a few steam valves on the side. I'm just old school. And at night, that cockpit going dark, man, you don't know which way is up, which way is down.
I bet. What a scary situation. So stalling a plane mechanically, how does that happen?
Well, that's when your wings stop working, okay? So on an airplane, they'll call The airplane, the wings produce the lift. That's what makes the airplane fly. The thrust just makes it go forward. And after a certain airspeed and your angle of your wings, if they're in the wrong position, your airplane just stops flying. It falls out of the sky like a brick, just like that Lear did last night.
Do you think birds could have anything to do with something like this?
Possibly, but they'd still be able to, unless the birds hit both engines. Now those odds are starting to drop down. I mean, going in that direction, I really don't see it. It's going to be difficult to recover information from that aircraft itself because it was completely destroyed. I think it slammed right into an intersection.
You know, it's 2025. There are cameras everywhere because it was right in Philadelphia. 7 homes burnt. Obviously, jet fuel flying everywhere, right? On takeoff, how many gallons of jet fuel do you think were in that plane?
A lot of fuel. So that explains the explosion. It may have not been necessary to fully top it off, but it was close to being full enough because they were just leaving. They were not landing.
Right.
Landing, it'd be a different scenario. There'd be less fuel.
That's why pilots have to dump sometimes, right? So if they're going to have to make some kind of emergency landing.
That's one reason. So, let's say you're taking off with a 747 fully loaded, and you have a problem, you got to dump fuel for 2 reasons. Yeah, one for safety, but 2, there's a maximum landing weight. You can't land a fully loaded aircraft with fuel. You're going to destroy the gear.
Ah, gotcha.
They anticipate burning all that fuel off by the time you get to your destination.
Anything we want to add now that it's been 2 days since the Blackhawk and American Airline regional jet accident? Anything we want to add now that we know a little bit more?
Try not to figure out the scenario immediately. It's just like any other investigation. You got to figure out what happened. There's usually a series of events, a chain of events that happen. And it'll eventually come out. With my opinion, with the incident in D.C., like I said before, I kept going towards the tower. And the more I hear, the more I am going towards the tower. The PSA flight did absolutely nothing wrong. They were where they were supposed to be,
right.
100%. The helicopter, the ceiling for the helicopter, which I didn't know when you interviewed me earlier, was 200 feet. So what they did was they took off, they rolled down the river, and at a certain point they put on their night vision goggles, something I just don't understand why you would train with night vision goggles over the Potomac, one of the most well-lit cities in the United States, right next to an airport, a very busy airport. And they veered up. They went from 200 feet to 250 to 300. I think they collided at 325, 350 feet, something like that. In the tower, though, why wasn't there a man for civil aviation and one for the military? One for helicopters, one for aircraft. There was, and they were understaffed, and the guy had to leave, and the guy tried covering for him, and this scenario ended up happening.
Let somebody go early home from work, and this happens. Wow.
Well, dude, they're understaffed, and most people don't even realize why they're understaffed. How many people did they fire for refusing to take the COVID shot? And then the FAA came out and said, yeah, we'll take anybody. You have disabilities, you have mental issues, come on board. I couldn't believe my ears. Air traffic control is the most stressful job in the world. I respect those guys big time for what they do. I couldn't do it. I couldn't sleep at night.
Well, listen, man, I really appreciate you calling in again. Sorry it's under such tragic situation.
No problem. I have a solution. Maybe someone should look into it. How about rehiring all those guys that they fired? You can't replace 20 years of experience with any new hire.
Absolutely.
How about you call them back and pay them back what you owe them for firing them?
That's a great idea. Got a bunch of qualified people out there that refused to take a COVID shot, so they lost their job, and now
No, give them their money and give them their job back.
Amen to that. All right, hey, listen, man, thanks again, Danny, for calling in. Once again, Dane Konjevic, 35 years plus as a pilot, Southern Illinois University at Carbondale Aviation School of Aviation graduate, one of the top schools in the nation, man. I really appreciate you calling in and giving us your 2 cents. You have a great day, brother, and I will talk to you soon.
Take care.
All
Bye-bye.
right. Peace. All right, guys, there you have it. I love Danny, but I hate to have him calling in every other day for another tragic event in aviation. I'm Rodney at Rodney Hood Talks. Thanks for tuning in, guys. And just remember, God loves you, and so do I. Peace.